Get your black hands off me. I don't let the help touch me.
A billionaire slapped a pregnant black nurse across the face. Her head snapped sideways. Before she could breathe, he shoved her to the ground and stomped on her hand. Bones cracked against cold hospital tile. 7 months pregnant. 11 years saving lives. And Preston Caldwell III, worth $9 billion, was standing over her like she was something he'd scraped off his shoe. Her name was Olivia Palmer. She cradled her belly with her broken hand, looked up at him, and whispered.
I'm still your nurse, sir.
He didn't know who she was married to. He didn't know her husband had just parked downstairs. And he didn't know her husband was the director of the FBI. 4 words were about to end this billionaire's world. That's my wife. Have you ever wished karma kept a schedule? Stay. Today, it does. A pregnant woman on a hospital floor with a broken hand, and the man who broke it is fixing his cufflinks. I'm Vance Narrator. This one messed me up. Because what happened next? Nobody saw it coming. So let's rewind. 6 hours earlier, 5:45 in the morning, alarm goes off in this modest 3-bedroom house on the west side of the city. Nothing fancy, right? Small yard with a vegetable garden Olivia planted last spring. Honda Accord in the driveway. Paid off, reliable, the kind of car that says, we work hard and we sleep well. No luxury sedan, no driver waiting outside. Just a woman in navy scrubs standing in her kitchen, packing 2 lunches before the sun even came up. Olivia Palmer was humming while she worked. Something soft. Gospel, maybe. Or just a little melody she was making up for the baby. She did that sometimes. Invented these little songs and whispered them against her belly while the coffee brewed. She said it was so the baby would recognize her voice when she came out. Her husband said it was because Olivia just couldn't help taking care of people, even the ones who hadn't been born yet. 7 months pregnant. A girl. They were going to name her Ruth. Now here's a detail that matters later, so pay attention. On the refrigerator door, held by a magnet from a vacation in Savannah, there was a photograph. Olivia and this tall man in a dark suit, his arm around her waist, his face turned slightly to the left, caught mid-laugh, half hidden by shadow. You'd look at it and think, nice couple, happy, normal. You wouldn't think twice. And you definitely would not guess that the man in that photo commanded the largest law enforcement agency in the entire United States of America. That was the point. They kept it that way. Always had. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She picked up without even checking. Hey, babe. You left your prenatal vitamins on the nightstand again. His voice was deep, warm, the kind of voice that sounds like home no matter where you hear it. She smiled. I'll take them at work. You still coming to the 4 o'clock appointment? Wouldn't miss it. I'll come straight from the office. Parking garage, elevator, straight up to your floor. You won't even know I'm coming until I'm right there. Love you. Love you more. Both of you. She hung up, grabbed her keys, drove herself to Mercy General Hospital in the Honda while her husband finished knotting his tie upstairs. A charcoal tie, to match a charcoal suit. To match the gravity of a title she had never once mentioned to a single colleague at that hospital. Not once. In 11 years. Because Olivia Palmer didn't build her reputation on somebody else's name. She built it on her own 2 hands. The same hands that had started IVs at 2 in the morning when the rest of the floor was asleep. The same hands that held dying patients when their families couldn't get there in time. The same hands that a billionaire was going to try to crush under his shoe before this day was over. Mercy General Hospital sat like a fortress in the center of downtown. 32 floors, one of the top-ranked medical centers on the East Coast, and on the 6th floor, the VIP wing. That's where Olivia ran things. Now, the VIP wing, It wasn't like the rest of the hospital, not even close. Private suites with imported linens, personal chef on call, temperature-controlled rooms adjusted to the half-degree. This was where senators came to recover from knee surgeries, where tech billionaires got their hearts monitored after too many sleepless launches, where foreign diplomats flew in when they didn't trust hospitals back home. And Olivia Palmer was the gatekeeper, senior charge nurse, the one the doctors trusted with their most critical patients, the one families sent handwritten thank you notes to months after discharge. 11 years on that floor without a single formal complaint. Not one. She walked through the sliding glass doors at 6:38 a.m. Earl, the 60-year-old security guard who'd been at Mercy General longer than most of the equipment, looked up from his crossword puzzle and grinned. There she is. How's my future goddaughter doing this morning? Olivia patted her belly. Active. She kicked me through my entire shower. I think she's training for something. That's because she knows greatness is coming. Earl winked. Go save some lives, Mama. She badged through the VIP entrance and found Grace Holloway already at the nurses' station. 28 years old, 2 years on the job. Bright, eager, still young enough to believe that hard work was the only thing that mattered in a hospital. Olivia was her mentor, the whole reason Grace had requested this floor. Grace looked up from her screen, face tight, nervous. Olivia, did you see the memo from Todd Mercer? Which memo? The one marked urgent, bold, underlined, exclamation point? Grace swallowed hard. We've got a VIP admission today. Preston Caldwell III. Olivia knew the name. Everybody in the city knew the name. Real estate empire. Luxury towers in 14 American cities. His face on Forbes covers and charity gala photographs. His foundation had pledged $20 million to fund the hospital's new East Wing expansion. His name was literally going on the building. What's the admission for? Elective cardiac monitoring. He had some minor episode at a charity event last week. Not an emergency, just a precaution. Rich person precaution. So a billionaire's checkup, basically. But Todd's memo says, and I'm quoting, ensure white glove treatment at every level. This patient's experience is the hospital's #1 priority. Olivia set her bag down, looked at Grace. Every patient is a priority. That's the whole job, Grace. Angela Dorsey appeared right about then, came around the corner like she always did, with purpose. 50 years old, veteran ER nurse, union representative. Built like a woman who'd spent 3 decades standing between vulnerable patients and bureaucratic chaos without blinking once. Heard we've got royalty arriving today. Angela leaned against the counter, arms folded across her chest. Let me guess. Todd's already rolling out the red carpet and practicing his curtsy. You read the memo too? I read between the lines. Angela looked at Olivia with those steady eyes. Just remember, girl, he bleeds the same color we do. Don't let anybody make you forget that. At 9:15 a.m., a convoy of 3 black SUVs pulled up to the hospital's private entrance. First through the door was Victor Brannigan, Preston Caldwell's personal attorney and full-time fixer. 45, $3,000 suit, eyes like a calculator. The kind of man who billed $800 an hour and earned every cent, making inconvenient truths and inconvenient people vanish before they became headlines. Victor walked that VIP suite like a 5-star hotel critic, checked the thermostat, frowned at the flower arrangement, demanded some specific brand of Italian sparkling water the hospital didn't carry, sent a junior associate across town to buy 6 cases. Then Preston Caldwell III walked in. Cashmere overcoat draped over his shoulders like a cape, gold Patek Philippe on his wrist, handmade Italian leather shoes clicking against the hospital tile like a countdown clock. He moved through that corridor the way a landlord walks through a building he's about to condemn, with ownership, with judgment, with the absolute certainty that everything in his line of sight existed for one purpose: to serve him. Todd Mercer, Hospital VP of Operations, 38, perpetually sweating, was right there at the entrance to receive him personally. Shook Preston's hand with both of his own, smiling so hard it looked painful. Mr. Caldwell, what an honor. Everything is prepared exactly to your specifications. Anything you need, anything at all, I'm personally available around the clock. Preston barely glanced at him. His eyes swept the corridor, past the nurse's station, landed on Olivia. He looked at her the way a man looks at something that doesn't belong in his world. His jaw tightened, his chin lifted. A micro-expression, subtle enough to deny, obvious enough to feel in your gut. He said nothing. Not yet. But everybody in that corridor felt the temperature change, like something cold had just walked in alongside the cashmere and the cologne, like the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for whatever was about to go wrong. 9:40 a.m. Olivia walked into Preston Caldwell's suite to do the standard intake assessment. Clipboard in her left hand, blood pressure cuff over her right shoulder, same routine she'd done thousands of times across 11 years. Blood pressure, medical history, IV prep. 15 minutes. Professional. Painless. Good morning, Mr. Caldwell. I'm Olivia, your charge nurse for today. I'll be handling your intake. Vitals, medical history review, IV prep for the cardiac monitor. Should take about 15 minutes. Preston was sitting on the edge of the hospital bed. Didn't look up. Eyes fixed on his phone, scrolling through something, or pretending to scroll, which amounted to the same thing. She might as well have been talking to the furniture. She waited. 3 seconds. 5. 7. Then he spoke, still not looking at her. I thought I made my preferences clear to Todd. Victor Brannigan, standing by the window like a sentry, shifted his weight and turned toward Olivia. Voice smooth, practiced, the vocal equivalent of a silk glove hiding a fist. Mr. Caldwell has indicated he'd prefer a different nurse for the duration of his stay. I'm sure you understand. Olivia didn't blink, didn't shift. I understand patients sometimes have preferences. I respect that. But I'm the senior charge nurse on this unit, the most experienced and qualified person on this floor right now. Is there a specific medical concern I should be aware of? Now Preston looked up, slowly. His eyes traveled across her face first, then her scrubs, then her belly, then back up. The kind of look that catalogs a human being and files them under disposable. I don't need to explain my preferences. Flat, final. A door slamming shut. Get me someone else. He didn't say why. He didn't need to. Everyone in that room, Olivia, Victor, Preston himself, understood exactly what preferences meant. It wasn't about qualifications. It wasn't about experience. It was about the color of her skin, about who she was before she ever opened her mouth. Olivia held his gaze. Mr. Caldwell, I assure you that I don't want your assurance. He cut her off cold. I want you out of my room. Is there something about that sentence you're struggling with? She nodded once, set the blood pressure cuff on the bedside table, turned, walked out. In the hallway, she stopped, just for a moment, one hand against the wall, one hand on her belly. She closed her eyes and took a single breath, quiet enough that nobody heard it, deep enough that it reached the place inside her where the hurt lived. Then she opened her eyes, straightened up, and kept walking. She made it about 10 steps before Todd Mercer appeared from around the corner. His face was tight, voice barely a whisper. Olivia, can we talk? In private? Supply alcove, fluorescent light buzzing overhead, Todd's hands buried in his pockets, eyes on the floor. I know this is frustrating, I do. But the Caldwell Foundation is about to finalize a $20 million donation. His name goes on the East Wing. The board has been cultivating this relationship for over 2 years. A few walks. Todd. Her voice was calm. Her eyes were iron. "He doesn't want me as his nurse because I'm black. You know that. I know that. Everybody on this floor knows it." Todd flinched like she'd touched a live wire. "He didn't actually say that. He didn't have to. That's the whole point, Todd." Silence. Todd rubbed the back of his neck, hard, like he was trying to erase something written there. "I'm asking you, colleague to colleague, just let me put Grace in his room, just for today. Keep things smooth, the donation closes, everybody wins." Olivia looked at him. Really looked. "And if Grace were black, you'd reassign her too? How many black nurses do you rotate out before you admit what's actually happening?" No answer. "I'm going back in. I'm going to do the job you hired me for 11 years ago. And no donor, I don't care how many zeros he writes on a check, gets to dictate who's qualified based on the color of her skin." She turned, walked back toward the VIP corridor, footsteps steady, even, done negotiating. Behind her, Todd stood alone under the buzzing light, pulled out his phone, started drafting a message to the board. His hands were trembling. He didn't realize it yet, but he had just chosen a side. The wrong one. Olivia went back to Preston's suite at 10:05. Grace was with her this time, partly for training, standard for a mentee to observe, partly because somewhere in the quiet part of Olivia's mind, the part that had learned to prepare for the worst, she knew she might need a witness. "Mr. Caldwell, your preference has been noted. However, hospital protocol requires the senior charge nurse to complete the initial intake assessment. I'll be as efficient as possible." Preston was sitting up, arms crossed, watching her approach the bedside monitor with the expression of a man watching a cockroach crawl across his dinner plate. "You know," he said, almost casual, the way someone might comment on the weather, "in my buildings, the cleaning staff wear the same color scrubs." Grace's breath caught. She looked at Olivia. Olivia's face didn't change. Not a crack. Not a ripple. 11 years of practice holding that mask together. "I'm not cleaning staff, Mr. Caldwell. I'm the registered nurse responsible for your cardiac monitoring today." "May I have your left arm for the blood pressure reading?" "I said I don't want you touching me!" He yanked his arm away like she was contagious. "Are you deaf? Or is this a comprehension problem? Because I can use smaller words if you need me to." Grace's hand was shaking. She pressed it flat against her thigh to stop it. And then she did something she didn't plan, something from a place deeper than thinking, from instinct, from decency, from the kind of courage that doesn't announce itself. She reached up like she was adjusting her badge, found her phone in her breast pocket, tilted it upward, and pressed record. Preston grabbed his phone from the side table, dialed, put it on speaker. Todd picked up on ring 2. "Todd, listen carefully. I want this woman removed from my floor, not reassigned. Removed. If I see her face one more time, the donation is canceled, all 20 million. And I'll make sure every board member in this hospital knows exactly why." Todd's voice came through the speaker, thin, desperate, cracking at the edges. "Mr. Caldwell, I completely understand. I'll handle it right away, immediately. You have my personal guarantee." "Your guarantee?" Preston laughed. A blade. "Your guarantee is worth about as much as she is. Handle it. Now." Hung up. Todd was on the floor within 4 minutes. Olivia was at the nurse's station updating Preston's chart with calm, precise keystrokes, like nothing happened. Because in her world, the world of a black woman in a white institution, this kind of thing wasn't an event. It was Tuesday. Todd pulled her into the supply alcove, same spot, same buzz, but different voice this time. Not a request, not a plea, an order. "Olivia, I'm placing you on administrative leave, effective immediately. Collect your things and go home. I'll call you tomorrow. She stared at him. Administrative leave? On what grounds? Precautionary. Until we sort out the patient relations situation. Patient relations? Todd, he called me the help, compared me to cleaning staff, questioned whether I earned my degree, and your response is to send me home? It's temporary, Olivia. I promise. Don't promise me anything. Just answer one question. If I were white, would you be putting me on leave right now? He couldn't look at her, couldn't answer. And that silence was the loudest thing in the room. You're not protecting the hospital, Todd. You're protecting $20 million. At least have the guts to say it out loud. Angela Dorsey had been standing at the end of the corridor, watching, listening. She'd seen this exact movie before. Different hospital, different year, same script. And she was done watching it end the same way. She walked over, not fast, not slow, the deliberate pace of a woman who'd picked her moment. Todd, you send this pregnant woman home for doing her job? I file a grievance with the nurses' union before your elevator hits the lobby. Then the state nursing board. Then Channel 4. In that order. And I will enjoy every single phone call. Angela, this doesn't involve a pregnant black nurse suspended because a white billionaire doesn't want her skin color near his heartbeat. That involves every nurse in this building. That involves me. That involves the law. Todd opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Olivia, looked at Angela, looked at the floor. He was still staring at the floor when Preston's door flew open and the man himself stepped into the corridor. Hospital gown, cashmere robe, bare feet in designer slippers. Victor, half a step behind, already scanning for cameras. Preston's face was flushed, not from his heart condition, from rage. Pure, undiluted rage that this black woman in scrubs still existed on his floor. Why is she still here? That voice carried like a gunshot, hit every open door, every patient in bed, every family member in a doorway, every nurse at every station. I have been a patron of this hospital for 15 years. I have given more money to this institution than this woman will see in 10 lifetimes. And you, he jabbed a finger at Todd like a weapon, can't manage the simple task of removing one incompetent nurse? Olivia stood perfectly still. Mr. Caldwell, I'd encourage you to go back to your room. Your heart rate. Don't you dare! He stepped closer, close enough that his cologne killed the antiseptic air. Don't you dare talk to me about my health. You are nothing. You hear me? Nothing. You are here because someone checked a diversity box. Everyone knows it. Every doctor on this floor knows it. His voice dropped, lower, colder, more dangerous than any shout. And you're bringing another one into the world? His eyes crawled down to her belly. Contempt, pure, undisguised contempt. On whose tax dollars? Whose system? Who's paying for that? Something shifted behind Olivia's eyes. Not tears, not anger. Something deeper and older than both. The kind of pain that lives beneath the surface of every black woman who has ever been told, in 1,000 different ways, in 1,000 different rooms, that her existence is a burden, that her child is a cost, that her body is public property. She turned to walk away. She chose de-escalation. She chose the textbook. She chose grace. But Preston Caldwell didn't want grace. Preston Caldwell wanted destruction. He grabbed her arm. Fingers closed around her bicep like a vice, and he yanked her backward. Her hip slammed into the supply cart. Trays crashed. Metal instruments exploded across the tile like shrapnel. Then he slapped her, open palm, full force, across her left cheek. The sound cracked through the corridor like a bone breaking. She went down, Knees first, then palms. Cold tile against her skin, fluorescent lights blurring overhead, and before she could push herself up, before her brain could even begin to process what just happened, he stomped on her right hand, his full weight. 210 pounds of billionaire arrogance driven downward through an Italian leather sole onto the outstretched fingers of a pregnant woman on her knees. Something cracked, small bones, metacarpals, the bones of a hand that had inserted 10,000 IVs, that had held 100 dying patients through their last breath, that would, in 2 months, hold her daughter for the very first time. Grace screamed. Angela lunged forward. Earl moved faster than anyone had seen him move in 31 years. Victor was already spinning the narrative. Nobody saw anything. He lost his balance. She slipped. This was a medical episode. His cardiac condition. An accident? Angela was on the floor cradling Olivia. I saw it. Grace saw it. Earl saw it. Every single person on this floor saw it. Don't you dare! Todd Mercer stood frozen, mouth open. No words. The $20 million check had just turned into a crime scene, and his brain couldn't figure out which one to mourn. Earl positioned himself between Preston and Olivia, didn't touch the billionaire, just stood there. 60 years old, 240 pounds of refusal. Todd's voice cracked. Earl, escort Nurse Palmer out of the building. Earl didn't move. Earl? That is a direct order. No, sir. Earl? I said no. 31 years I've been here. Never once escorted a nurse out for doing her job. Not for you. Not for him. Not for 20 million. Not for 20 billion. That woman is on the floor bleeding. She's pregnant. And you want me to drag her out? No, sir. Not today. Not ever. And right there, in the middle of all that chaos, Angela cradling Olivia, Earl standing guard, Grace sobbing, Victor dialing, Todd falling apart. Olivia's phone buzzed. She was on her knees, blood on her lip from the slap, right hand swelling, already turning violet. Left hand pressed against her belly where Ruth was kicking, hard, frantic, like the baby could feel every tremor of what was happening. She glanced at the screen. One message. Parking now. Coming up. D. Her expression changed, subtle, almost invisible. Not relief, not victory. Something quieter than both. The look of a woman who knows she has already survived the worst part. Who knows the next chapter is about to begin. She slid the phone back into her pocket, said nothing. At the end of the hallway, the elevator chimed, and Preston Caldwell III, billionaire, building owner, a man who had spent 61 years believing that money and power were the same thing, had absolutely no idea that the next 90 seconds were going to teach him the difference. Hold on, I need to stop. A man stomped on a pregnant woman's hand, in a hospital, in front of everybody. And his lawyer's first move? Nobody saw anything. That's not just violence. That's a system. But you know what scared me most? It wasn't Preston. It was Todd. The guy who wasn't cruel, just quiet. And quiet is the same thing as guilty. All right, that elevator just opened. The elevator doors opened. 2 men stepped out first. Dark suits, earpieces, the kind of posture that doesn't come from a gym membership. It comes from years of walking into rooms where the threat level is classified. They swept the corridor the way searchlights sweep a perimeter, automatic, efficient, missing nothing. Then the third man stepped out. Tall, 6'3", charcoal suit, the same one Olivia had watched him lay out on the bed that morning while she packed lunches in the kitchen. Charcoal tie, shoes polished to a mirror. He moved the way deep water moves, calm on the surface but heavy enough underneath to pull you down if you made the mistake of thinking it was shallow. Dominic Palmer. But nobody in that corridor knew his name. Nobody knew his title. Nobody knew that the photograph on Olivia's refrigerator, the one with his face half hidden in shadow, was a picture of the most powerful law enforcement official in the United States. All they saw was a tall black man in a very good suit, walking with purpose toward the sound of a woman crying and metal instruments scattered across a hospital floor. His eyes read the scene in 3 seconds. The overturned supply cart, the blood pressure cuff on the ground, nurses clustered around a figure on the floor, Earl standing like a wall, Todd pressed against the wall with the face of a man watching his career burn in real time, Victor Brannigan clutching a dead phone. Then Dominic saw Olivia on the floor, Grace and Angela holding her, blood on her lip. A thin red line with a slap had split the skin, right hand swollen and curled against her belly, purple spreading across her knuckles like a bruise-colored sunrise. The belly. Their daughter, Ruth. Something moved behind Dominic Palmer's eyes. It wasn't rage, not yet. It was something more controlled than rage and more dangerous because of that control. The look of a man who had spent 22 years reading crime scenes for the federal government, and who was now standing inside one that contained his pregnant wife, bleeding, on the floor. His jaw tightened. 1 degree. His stride didn't change. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He walked the way a verdict walks into a courtroom. Steady, inevitable, carrying the full weight of everything that was about to change. Todd saw him first, tall black man with 2 serious-looking escorts heading straight for the restricted VIP wing. Todd peeled himself off the wall, one hand up. "Sir, this is a restricted area. I'm going to need to see identification." One of the agents raised a palm, flat, final. Toto's mouth closed by itself, not because of the hand, because of the eyes behind it. Eyes that made the word no feel geological. Dominic reached Olivia. He knelt, right knee on the tile beside her. His hand, the hand that signed executive orders, that held classified briefing folders, that shook hands with the president, cupped her face with a gentleness that made Grace start crying all over again. His thumb brushed the blood from her lip, carefully, the way you touch something precious that someone has tried to break. He spoke to her first, not to the room, not to Preston, not to the cameras or the witnesses. To her. "Are you okay?" She nodded, voice steady, even now. "I'm fine. Baby's fine." He looked at her hand, the swelling, the purple, the shape of a shoe sole still faintly visible on her skin. Who did this? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. His eyes followed the line, from her crushed hand to the tile, to the shoe print, to the Italian leather shoes still on the feet of a man standing 8 feet away in a hospital robe, looking like he'd just been told the ground under him wasn't solid anymore. Dominic stood, slowly, the way a tide pulls back from shore before returning with everything it has. Preston watched this stranger rise and felt something unfamiliar, something he hadn't experienced in so long he couldn't name it right away. Cold. Small. A pebble of doubt sitting in the pit of his stomach. He crushed it. Force of habit. "And who the hell are you?" His voice still carried the muscle memory of authority, the tone of a man who had never, in 61 years, then answered in a way he didn't control. "Another one of her people? Some quota hire from a government office? Because my attorneys are already on the phone and this entire circus, Mr. Caldwell." 2 words. Quiet. Unhurried. But the way Dominic said them, like a key turning in a lock that only opens once, made Preston stop mid-sentence. His mouth stayed open. Nothing came out. Like his voice had been repossessed. Dominic reached into his jacket. Not fast, not dramatic. The way a man reaches for something he has carried every single day for 22 years. Something that isn't a prop or a performance, but an extension of who he is. He pulled out a credential case, black leather, worn at the edges from 2 decades of daily use. He opened it, held it up, not at arm's length, not like a movie, just high enough for Preston to read the words. Dominic Palmer, Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The corridor became a vacuum. Sound left. Air left. Time left. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to stop flickering and hold perfectly still. Preston's face went white, not pale, white, the color of a man whose blood has decided it no longer wants to be anywhere near his face. Dominic lowered the badge, looked at Olivia, still on the floor, still cradling her belly, still bleeding. Then looked back at Preston. And that woman, the one on the floor with a broken hand and blood on her face, the one you slapped and stomped on while she was 7 months pregnant with my daughter. That's my wife. 4 words. That's my wife. And the entire architecture of Preston Caldwell's world, every tower, every title, every zero in every bank account, collapsed like a building with no foundation. Victor Brannigan's phone slipped from his fingers and clattered on the tile. He didn't bend to pick it up. His legs didn't seem capable of bending. Todd Mercer's back hit the wall again. His face was the color of old paper. Preston's mouth moved. No sound came out. His hands, the same hands that had slapped a pregnant woman, that had stomped on her fingers, were shaking so badly he had to grip the corridor railing just to stay vertical. Dominic let the silence work. He understood silence the way a surgeon understands a scalpel. Where to place it, how long to hold it, exactly how deep to let it cut. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Then he spoke again. Same calm, same quiet. Every word a stone laid precisely into a wall that Preston would never climb over. I reviewed the security footage on my way up. This hospital's camera system is networked to a federal server, part of a security protocol my office implemented 2 years ago for facilities treating government officials. I have the entire incident, time-stamped, archived. The slap, the shove, the stomp, on a pregnant woman. Victor found his voice. Lawyers always do. It's the last thing to die. Director Palmer, I'm sure this is a significant misunderstanding. My client has a cardiac condition, and it's entirely possible he experienced a... Counsel! Dominic's gaze moved to Victor like a spotlight finding its target. Your client was standing upright. He struck a woman across the face with an open hand. He pushed her to the floor, and he drove his shoe into her hand with his full body weight. The footage is unambiguous. Would you like to keep explaining how he lost his balance? Because I have 22 years of experience evaluating exactly this kind of explanation, and I can tell you right now, it doesn't end well for the person giving it. Victor closed his mouth. For the first time in his career, he had absolutely nothing to sell. Dominic turned back to Preston. But the assault on my wife, as devastating as it is to me and my family, isn't even the worst part of your day, Mr. Caldwell. Preston's whisper came from somewhere deep and broken. What are you talking about? The Caldwell Foundation has been under federal investigation for 19 months. Money laundering through luxury real estate developments. 14 shell companies registered across 6 states. Falsified property valuations, wire fraud, tax evasion. The case file runs 3,200 pages. Preston's legs buckled. He caught himself on the railing, knuckles white, face gray. I wasn't planning to tell you this today. That's not how the director of the FBI typically spends his Tuesday afternoon. But since you chose today, of all days, to slap my pregnant wife across the face and crush her hand under your shoe in a corridor full of witnesses and cameras? Consider yourself notified. Victor, one last try. The desperation of a drowning man reaching for driftwood. This is entrapment. You planted her here. You, counsel. My wife has worked in this hospital for 11 years. She was here before I became director, before I was assistant director, before I was a field agent in the Richmond office. She earned her position the way she has earned everything in her life, by being extraordinary at her job and never once asking anyone to know my name. He paused. Let the pause breathe. There is no entrapment. There is only a man who believed his money made him untouchable. It doesn't. Behind Olivia, Angela Dorsey uncrossed her arms. Her eyes were wet. Her jaw was set. And she did the thing nobody expected, but that the moment absolutely demanded. She started clapping. Slow, steady. One clap per heartbeat. The sound of 30 years of watching this exact scene play out with the wrong ending. And finally, seeing it end right. Grace joined, trembling hands coming together through tears. Then Earl. His claps were heavy, solid, like stones being laid for a foundation. Then a nurse from the adjacent station. Then a patient's wife standing in her doorway with her hand over her mouth. Then the patient himself, who wheeled his IV pole forward 2 feet, just so he could be part of it. It wasn't loud. It wasn't triumphant. It was the quietest ovation in the history of Mercy General Hospital. And it was the loudest thing Preston Caldwell had ever heard in his life. He looked around, at the faces, at the hands, at the badge, at the woman he'd struck, now being helped to her feet by 2 federal agents who showed her more care in 10 seconds than he had given in an hour. For the first time in 61 years, Preston Caldwell III was not the most powerful person in the room. He wasn't even close. Dominic turned to his agents. Contact local PD, aggravated assault on a pregnant woman. Coordinate with Washington. Caldwell Foundation investigation goes to priority status immediately. And get a medic up here, now! One agent stepped away, earpiece, low voice, the quiet machinery of consequence engaging. Grace Holloway stepped forward. She was shaking, tears streaming, but she was standing. Standing the way Olivia had taught her to stand. She held up her phone. Director Palmer, I recorded it. Everything. From the first time he called her the help, the slap, the stomp, all of it. It's all here. Dominic looked at her. And for the first time since he had stepped off that elevator, the director of the FBI disappeared. The title fell away. The badge fell away, and what was left was just a man, a husband, a father, looking at a 28-year-old nurse who had done something brave when bravery was the hardest choice in the room. What's your name? Grace. Grace Holloway. Grace, what you did took real courage. That recording is evidence that will matter in a court of law. It matters. And you matter. He paused. Thank you. Grace broke. She nodded through the tears and Angela pulled her close. Olivia was standing now, broken hand cradled against her chest, split lip already swelling, but standing. She looked at Dominic, not as the director, not as the badge, not as the title, but as the man who had whispered, "Love you more, both of you," into the phone 6 hours ago while she packed lunches in the kitchen. He didn't save her. She knew that. But he showed up. And sometimes, in a world that asks certain people to be strong every single day without anyone watching, showing up is everything. The police arrived at 4:22 p.m. 2 officers, no sirens, no spectacle, just procedure. The kind that doesn't bend for money, no matter how many zeros are involved. Preston Caldwell III was formally informed that he would be charged with aggravated assault. Because the victim was 7 months pregnant, the charge carried enhanced penalties under state law. Assault on a pregnant woman is classified as a second-degree felony in multiple jurisdictions, punishable by up to 15 years. Victor Brannigan did what Victor Brannigan was built to do.
My client will post bail immediately. I'd like to propose a private settlement. A non-disclosure agreement can be drafted within the hour. Mrs. Palmer would be compensated generously. Generously. And this entire matter, Dominic didn't even look at him. This happened in a public corridor, in front of 14 witnesses, a hospital security camera, and the personal recording that is now part of a federal evidence file. It will end the same way it happened, in public.
Preston was escorted from the VIP wing at 4:41 p.m., not in handcuffs. That would come at processing. But the image was enough to last a lifetime. A billionaire in a hospital gown, shuffling between 2 police officers, past the nurse's station he had tried to command 2 hours earlier. Past Earl, who stood at attention and nodded once. Not at Preston. At Justice. Past Angela, arms folded, chin high. Looking like a woman who had just witnessed something she'd been praying for since the first day she pinned on a badge. Past Grace, who held her phone against her heart like a shield, the small instrument that had captured truth when truth was the most dangerous thing in the room. Within 48 hours, the Caldwell Foundation formally rescinded its $20 million pledge. The hospital board released a statement that every major news outlet in the country picked up. Mercy General Hospital does not accept financial contributions conditioned on the silence, removal, or mistreatment of its staff. Our nurses are not for sale. Our values are not negotiable. 3 days after the incident, Dr. Edmund Sawyer, Chief of Medicine, 62 years old, a man who never raised his voice because he'd never needed to, called an emergency session of the hospital's executive leadership. Todd Mercer was asked to attend. He was not asked to speak. Todd, I have reviewed every element of this incident. You received a discrimination complaint from a senior nurse with an unblemished 11-year record. Your response was to suspend the nurse. You attempted to reassign her to protect a financial donation. When the situation escalated to physical violence, you failed to intervene. You failed to call security. You failed to call the police. And you instructed a security officer to remove the victim from the building. Todd stared at the conference table. Effective immediately, you are placed on indefinite administrative leave pending a full investigation by the Hospital Ethics Board and an independent review by the State Nursing Commission. Your access credentials are revoked. Security will accompany you to collect your personal belongings. Todd stood, nodded once, left. Nobody shook his hand. The door closed behind him with the soft click of a career ending. Angela Dorsey filed the formal grievance she had promised. It triggered a system-wide policy review that took 4 months and changed the hospital permanently. By the end of the year, Mercy General had implemented 3 landmark reforms: an explicit anti-retaliation policy shielding staff from donor interference, a mandatory reporting protocol for any incident involving patient on-staff discrimination or violence, and an independent ombudsman office with the authority to override administrative decisions in real time. Angela's name was on every draft. Other hospitals adopted it within the year. Grace Holloway's recording went viral, not because Dominic authorized it, not because Olivia asked for it. Grace posted it herself, with Olivia's written permission, on a quiet Tuesday evening. Her caption read, "This is what happened to my mentor. This is what happens every day. This is why I became a nurse." 4 million views in 72 hours, and the comment section became something no algorithm could have predicted. Not just outrage, but testimony. Thousands of nurses, thousands of Black professionals, Thousands of pregnant women sharing their own Prestons, their own Todds, their own hallways, saying, "This happened to me too, and thank you for making it visible." 3 weeks later, a handwritten letter arrived at the Palmer home. No law firm logo, no legal language, just a man's handwriting on plain stationery. Mrs. Palmer, I have spent 3 weeks being advised by lawyers on what to write to you. This letter is not that. This is what I could not say in that corridor because I lacked the decency to feel it. I was raised to believe that wealth was proof of virtue, that people who looked like me were owed the world, and people who looked like you were meant to serve it quietly. I carried this belief for 61 years. I carried it into your hospital. I carried it into the moment I looked at you and decided you were nothing. You were on the floor, pregnant, bleeding, and you looked up at me and said, "I'm still your nurse, sir." 5 words, and they broke something inside me that 61 years of money and power had kept perfectly intact. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am not entitled to it. I am telling you that I see what I did, and I will spend whatever time I have left trying to become someone who would never do it again. Olivia read the letter at the kitchen table. Dominic sat beside her, his hand on her shoulder, Ruth kicking softly beneath her ribs, a small, steady rhythm like a heartbeat rehearsing for the world. She folded the letter, placed it in a drawer. She did not write back. That was her answer. Forgiveness is not a debt that victims owe. Acknowledgement is a door, but walking through it is the work of a lifetime. She didn't owe Preston that lifetime. She owed herself the peace of closing the drawer and moving on. Olivia Palmer returned to Mercy General on a Monday morning. Full reinstatement. The VIP wing. Her wing. She walked through the sliding doors, Earl at his desk. He didn't say anything, just nodded. The kind of nod between two people who have been through something together and don't need words to honor it. Angela, at the nurse's station, looked up, looked at Olivia, went back to her chart. No speech, no ceremony, just the quiet acknowledgement of a woman who belonged exactly where she was. Grace was prepping a patient file. She smiled when Olivia walked past, the kind of smile that says, "I'm still here because you showed me how to stay." Olivia entered a patient room. New patient, new day. Same scrubs, same clipboard, same steady, unbreakable voice. "Good morning. I'm Olivia, your charge nurse. How are we feeling today?" Every year in the United States, more than 75% of Black women working in healthcare report experiencing racial discrimination on the job. Not in anonymous surveys about feelings, in documented incidents, formal complaints, patterns that repeat in hospital after hospital, city after city, decade after decade. Pregnant workers who report workplace abuse face retaliation at twice the rate of their non-pregnant colleagues, not because pregnancy makes them weaker, because it makes them more visible, more exposed, easier to push aside or push to the ground. And in the overwhelming majority of cases where a wealthy individual is accused of assaulting a service worker, the charges are reduced or quietly dropped. The system doesn't collapse. It bends. It bends toward power. It bends toward money. And it bends away from people like Olivia Palmer. But this story is not about a system that bent. This story is about a woman who didn't. Olivia Palmer didn't bend when a billionaire told her she didn't belong. She didn't bend when her boss tried to erase her. She didn't bend when a man worth $9 billion slapped her across the face and crushed her hand under his shoe. She didn't bend when the floor was cold and the blood was hers, and every voice in the corridor belonged to someone who wanted her to disappear. She looked up from that floor, pregnant, broken, bleeding, and said 5 words that $9 billion could not buy. I'm still your nurse, sir. That is power. Not the kind that comes from a badge or a bank account. The kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are and refusing, under any pressure, to become less. Dominic Palmer walking through that elevator didn't give Olivia power. It didn't rescue her. It didn't save her. It revealed her. It forced the world to see what she had been carrying all along. Quietly, gracefully, without applause. The same way she carried it every morning when she drove her Honda to work. The same way she carried it every night when she held her belly and sang made-up songs to a daughter who hadn't been born yet. So let me ask you the question I asked at the very beginning. Have you ever watched someone with all the money in the world try to crush a person who had nothing but her dignity and wished, just once, that karma kept a schedule? Maybe you have. Maybe you've lived it. Maybe you are living it right now. Maybe you're the one standing in the corridor being told you're nothing by someone who has never once had to prove they're something. If this story made you feel anger, good. That anger is correct. If it made you feel hope, hold on to it. Hope is not naive. Hope is what Olivia had when she put on her scrubs that morning. Hope is what Grace had when she pressed record. Hope is what Angela had when she started clapping in that corridor. Hope is the thing that karma uses to keep its schedule. If you know an Olivia, share this story with her. Not for views, not for likes, because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone who is standing alone in a hallway is to let them know that somebody sees them, that somebody is watching, that somebody refuses to look away. And if you are an Olivia, if you are standing in your own corridor right now, facing your own Preston, hearing your own version of those words, hear me clearly. Don't bend, don't break, don't beg, don't shrink. Stand. Because the door always opens, and when it does, the world will finally see what you've known about yourself all along. This is Vance Narrator. Real talk. Have you ever been the person in that hallway? Had somebody look at your skin, your accent, your body, and decide you were less before you even opened your mouth? Me too. I didn't have an FBI director show up for me, but somebody saw it and didn't look away. That was enough. So drop a comment. Tell the next person who reads it, your hallway, your Preston, how you're still standing. Like, share, subscribe. See you in the next one. Based on composite real-world events, all names and identifying details have been fictionalized.